Shalom, I'm Batya.
And I'm Mottle.
And this is
Stuff You Should Know. It's all that stuff that you always wanted to know, that you're Jewish and you think you should know, and maybe one day you will know, and maybe you went to Hebrew school and you knew and then you forgot, and now you're trying to come back to it and learn a little bit about it. Maybe you never knew it, but you think there's this stuff out there that Jews should know, and you were looking for a place to do that. And this is it.
Stuff you should know.
Batya, actually, someone came up to me the other day. Mm-hmm. And I told them about our podcast, and they said, "What's it called?" And I said, "Stuff Jews Should Know." And you know what they said to me?
No.
They said, "What's that about?" I was like, "Really? Really?"
It's politics.
It's right. What's stuff Jews should know about? I mean, I have the Mottle Wolf show, and it's fair to say, "What's that about?" It's about basically what interests Mottle Wolf,
right.
And that also makes sense after you explain it. But once you hear the name "Stuff Jews Should Know," I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Right. Well, that's what we were going for.
That's what we were going for. That's what we were going for. It's all this stuff that Jews should know.
And today, here's a big one. We are talking about what Jews should know about a Jewish wedding.
Jewish weddings. Have you ever been to a Jewish wedding? Did you go to a Jewish wedding? Did you have a Jewish wedding? We've been to two really great weddings, and we were sitting around there talking and thinking like, hey, we got to do a topic on this. What's happening at a Jewish wedding? There's lots of stuff happening.
Yeah, it's amazing. And we had a very, very close friend get married a couple weeks ago.
Tova got married. That was
Shout
great.
Shout out to Tova in Iran.
And Eliana Mandel.
Right.
She got married. That was a beautiful wedding. And that was so much joy.
It was so much joy. Our faces hurt from smiling.
Yeah.
It was so amazing.
There's something really, everything about it has similar. We want to run you guys through the entire day. So next time you go to a Jewish wedding, or if you've never been to a Jewish wedding, or maybe you're about to go to a Jewish wedding and you did a search for this and you found this out, and
or you're about to have a Jewish wedding.
Or you're about to have a Jewish wedding, and you know what? If you're going to have a Jewish wedding and you have any questions, and by the way, if you have any questions about any of this stuff, send us an email. You can send us an email at podcast@stuffjewshouldknow.com.
Right, and we are happy to respond.
We're happy to respond. We love wedding questions. If somehow we didn't get to all this, because it is hard. There's a lot of stuff that goes on here. There are a lot of things in a Jewish wedding.
There's a lot to know, and it really starts before the wedding. I know we want to concentrate on the ceremony, but, there's different traditions. There's a henna party if you're Sephardi.
If you're Sephardi, where you color the hair. Have you ever been to a henna party?
I've never been to one.
I've never been to one. I mean,
I'd love an invite, hint, hint.
Hint. But there's a tradition from the East where, women paint their hands. There's the tichel party. The tichel party, which is traditionally Jewish women cover their hair. Mm-hmm. And with these, you're good at this, Batya.
Thank you.
People should look up your Facebook page and see. Because you do like the
I
whole
tie
different
the
things, the whole tickle things. And but you need a lot of them when you get married, you collect them. But when you're not married, you might not have a lot of them floating around.
What's really fun at the tichel party, I have to say real quick, is everybody brings one to the kala.
The tichel is the rag.
It's not a rag. It's a beautiful scarf.
The beautiful scarf.
And then, you play games and stuff like that. But also, everyone shows the kala how they tie.
The kala means bride.
The bride, right. How they would tie that tichel. And they put it on her head and they show her how to tie it. And it's really, really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never been to one. Okay.
No, nor would you be invited, but you would be invited to an ufruf.
An ufruf is the Shabbat before. The Shabbat, let's put it this way. I think a lot of times in secular weddings, non-Jewish weddings, I don't know what, I'm sure religions of any form have this, but this is not stuff other religions should know. This is stuff Jews should know. What I love about Jewish weddings is they become such a part of the community. It's not just your wedding bride, your wedding groom, chatan v'kala. Mm-hmm. It's your family's wedding. It's your community's wedding.
For sure.
And so there's all these community things that are done. The Shabbat before, the community gets together. Usually the bride spends the Shabbat before in her community. The groom spends it in his community. The groom is called up to the Torah. There are, it's just a party atmosphere that starts beforehand.
Right. And the woman gets a Shabbat Kala, which is the women get together and just celebrate her and have some time. It's
And
really
there
fun.
is this like kind of build up between like, the feminine energy that really revolves around the bride before the wedding, and the male energy like building up to where the chuppah, which we'll get to, where those two energies come together, and that's when everyone's standing around, and that's when it becomes just this incredible bursts of joy, and it's electric. It's
Even
electric.
as the wedding starts, when you arrive at the wedding,
All right, let's get to the wedding.
The chatan and kala, the groom and the bride, are still not together. The chatan's in his place
Right.
with his male energy, and the kala is in her place, and everybody comes to greet her and get blessings from her.
Right. So the day of, well, let's take a step back even. The day of the wedding is, first of all, it's like there's a tradition that the bride and groom don't see each other for full 7 days before the wedding. And the day of the wedding is compared by our sages like Yom Kippur. It's this day of holiness. Quite often there is a tradition where the bride and groom fast on their wedding day.
Right.
It's a day of prayer and a day of introspection. And
I
it
think
built
the
up.
fasting is Ashkenazi and not Sephardi, but
Some
I'm not
Sephardim,
sure.
some Sephardim fast, and some Ashkenazim don't fast.
Right.
But it's more like the idea of
It's a tradition.
it's a tradition, but the underlying idea of it is this is a day of spiritual experience. And that, I think, stretches through all of it. This is not just a party. This is not just a ceremony we have to get through. This is a spiritual endeavor that we're doing.
And part of that is that here in Israel,
Oh, yeah, that's
the
right.
chatan and kala will go to the kotel at some point.
The Western Wall, the bride
Western
and groom, there is a tradition that they go there. Eliana actually went to the Temple Mount. Like she went all, like it's an idea of you go to your holiest place. It's an awful joke that, so the groom could get
Do you
used to
wanna tell
talking
it?
to a wall.
Oh.
All right. I got one more of those before the end.
Oh, I think it's
Oh.
really the kala that needs to get used to talking to a wall.
So I'm not that bad. All right, sometimes.
You're not.
Sometimes. Okay, let's jump to the wedding itself.
Okay.
All right, so the wedding, as you started pointing out, you get to the wedding. The first thing you see at a Jewish wedding when you walk in is what's called, and this is written on the invitations, Kabbalat Panim.
Which means?
Literally, receiving faces.
Nice.
Which makes it, it sounds like you're meeting and traditionally, like you said, the bride is in one area and the groom is in the other area.
Right.
People usually go first to where the bride is. You know why that is?
Why?
That's usually where the food is. There's a whole meal. So, I mean, that's the other thing. Stuff Jews should know.
Right.
If you're Jewish, this is one thing you probably already know. There's a lot of Jewish things that revolve around food.
Right. There's a lot of food.
So that's the shmorg.
So, right, the shmorg. And the kala will be sitting there.
She'll be sitting in a
often
chair.
in a beautifully decorated chair. She has her mother on one side of her mother-in-law to be on the other side of her.
Right.
And she's greeting everybody.
It's a
they
receiving
come in,
line.
A receiving line.
And you go up, and really, I think a good indication of how holy you are, and I usually fail at this, is whether you go to the smorgasbord first or to go see the kala first.
Straight to the kala.
Straight to the kala. I think it depends, but no judgments, no judging if you go straight to the hors d'oeuvres.
Right. And then at some point, you disappear. The men disappear, and they go see the groom.
The groom,
chatan.
who is sitting in a room, and in the room you have the rabbi, the Masader Kiddushin. So Masader Kiddushin is the rabbi that
Performs
is
the ceremony.
the officiating clergy member.
Which
there.
you have been.
I
at
have
a
been.
Few weddings.
I am a rabbi, and I have. It's really fun. I mean, this is the hard part because
Well, your weddings rock.
my weddings rock. They rock. I have a good time doing weddings.
Right.
This is the part where it's serious because this is there's an element like the chuppah is fun. We'll get to that.
Right.
And this is fun also, but and we'll get to the wedding contract.
Well,
and
paint
stuff
the
before.
picture.
Paint the picture.
In a room here.
You're in a room, the Masader Kiddushin, which means the one who orders the wedding, literally.
Mm-hmm.
Puts it in order. Misader, like a seder.
Right.
The one who lines it all up. He's sitting there with the groom, the groom's father, the groom's father-in-law, and what they're really working on there, they're working
and
on
men from the community, friends, family.
Friends, family, everyone's around. There's usually quite a bit of singing. But what I'm always amazed by is most of these weddings we go to, the groom is really focusing in on the spiritual element of it.
How so?
Around them, people are singing, but you quite often see the groom, because he's been fasting all day. He's, when you pray the afternoon service, he actually does the afternoon service that he would do on Yom Kippur.
Right.
Which is with all the confession, like there's a whole extra thing, but he's in this real spiritual zone. It's the furthest thing you could possibly imagine from a bachelor party. It really is.
So you see him sitting there, maybe looking more intense.
People
maybe
around
his
him are
eyes
singing.
closed.
Right. People around him are singing, and then they fill out the contracts. Now, there's two things. There's one thing called a Tanaim, which we should talk about.
Okay. That's with the father of the bride,
right.
or the father of the groom.
Well, this goes back to a time a couple thousand years ago. Now, today we do a wedding as one thing, but in foregone times, years and years ago, what they had was there were two elements to a Jewish wedding. The first was called betrothal, where you would make a deal with someone else's father, with another family, that my daughter will marry your son. And then that son would be, and you would fill out a contract, right? This would all be, so you're not married yet. You don't live together yet.
This is where like engagement comes from.
But this was, you would actually have to get a divorce at this point if you didn't want it to go through.
Wow.
And it doesn't go through till a year later.
Okay.
And it gives the guy a year to basically pull his act together. Build
so
a house.
No wedding ceremony.
No, there's
living together.
No living together for another year, and then a year later, that's when you have the wedding ceremony. Today we do both of those ceremonies together at the same time.
Wait, he builds a house and prepares for his wife.
He prepares.
Often, right?
He nests, right? He creates a nest for her, and it's a beautiful idea. And I think people should do that. Like today, you talk to some young couples, and they go, "What are you gonna do? How are we gonna make a living?" But back then, that's what they did it. That's how they did it. So today, there's kind of a throwback to that, where they make a deal that I'm going to deliver my son to the wedding on time. Now, we don't make that deal until you're actually at the wedding on time. So just to make sure, because it could be problematic. That doesn't work out. Sometimes it doesn't. Well, it's very rarely.
You could see that as maybe even being like silly. It's not really that you're going to deliver him.
It's tradition.
He's already there,
right.
But it's part of the tradition.
Right.
And,
it's a
and
Tanaim.
also,
it's an agreement.
He is delivering him to the Chuppah. We'll get to that in a minute.
Right.
He's walking him to the Chuppah.
Right.
So
and
what else is going on in the room?
So then the mother-in-laws come. And
mother and mother-in-law.
Mother and mother-in-law, right? And they, at the end of this service, they smash a plate.
They each hold a side of the plate.
They each hold a side of the plate and smash it over the groom's head. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
They smash it on the table, or they smash it, and it's.
I've seen pictures of them doing it on a chair.
Right, on a chair. It's to symbolize that nothing should be broken in your house. There should be no fighting and no argument. I think it's interesting that the mother-in-laws are the ones that do that, but okay. Now we get on to the Ketubah. Right, the Ketubah.
A lot of breaking things at weddings. Surprised you don't hear about more stitches.
I have heard about stitches at weddings.
You?
Yeah. So now they actually wrap the plates in like a cloth or something. But
wow.
Yeah, but you gotta be careful. Be careful at your Jewish wedding.
Right.
So the Ketubah that they actually write now today, when you get it, it's mostly written out, but you have to fill certain things in. You fill,
The Ketubah is the wedding contract.
It's yes and no. It's a wedding contract, but it's an ancient document. It's actually spoken about in the book of Exodus, in Shemot. It's really the first kind of mention to it. We have found Ketubot, wedding contracts, that are 2,000 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, archaeologically here in Israel. And basically what it is it's the contract of, so like go back in time a couple thousand years ago, it was tough to be a woman 2,000 years ago. So if a man got sick of you, he would just send you on your way, and you would literally starve to death.
Right.
Like so women, I don't think this is a shock to anybody. Women did not have very many rights in the ancient world. Mm-hmm. What the Ketubah is it delineates the rights of a woman, or really the man's obligation to the woman in marriage.
So it's a prenup protecting the kala.
It's a prenup protecting the bride financially. Now, it mentions everything that the bride's bringing into the marriage. Like, you're bringing a certain amount of money with you. You're bringing a certain amount of, and today we just write camels, right?
Goats.
It really talks about pillows and bedding and things like that for the house. And the reason it mentions it, because if the man decides he wants to divorce his wife, you get those back.
You get those back plus.
You get those back, or the monetary value of that back, or it could give it to you in, land rights, plus the amount that a man, really alimony, that a man would have to give to a woman.
So it's really clear to him what he's he's doing if he asks her to leave, what he's
doing, what he's losing, and it protects her. It's really a beautiful document. It protects her in case of, today obviously women have careers. They do podcasts. They're psychologists, doctors. We have our first Orthodox Jewish female fighter pilot here in Israel. How about that? You can, in some ways it's an antiquated document, and in other ways I think it's a beautiful, beautiful connection to say that I am obligated to you. I am obligated to work.
And there's a few things that he's obligated to in the marriage that are in the contract also.
You know what? And I think this is very progressive. There is a sexual obligation that it says the male has to his wife. And don't forget, this starts in the days where you have multiple wives. And, but like if you marry a wife, you are obligated in your husbandly duties to your wife. And by the way, it doesn't give any obligations that a woman is obligated to.
Really?
Yeah. Doesn't bring any up. She just has to basically show up. She's there.
Which is so interesting. Now, you see people buy these elaborate, beautiful ketubahs, and it states that in it, and it's right up there on their wall.
Right. It's right up there.
Right up there on the wall.
Okay, so then after this, they fill this out. We dance the groom into the room where the bride is sitting in her chair.
Right. So now we're at the Bedeken.
And that's called the Bedeken. The Bedeken means to cover. And it's an interesting ceremony. It's a throwback to the biblical story where Jacob goes to marry. He works for 7 years for Laban to marry the love of his life, his soulmate, Rachel.
Right.
But he gets to the wedding and they do a switcheroo on him.
Right.
And he actually marries the older, not so pretty sister Leah.
It's just not the love of his life.
It actually says she's not so pretty.
Okay.
Not so pretty.
It's not very politically correct.
Rachel was a looker. Rachel was a looker. No doubt about it. It's clear from the text of the Bible. But her father says, no problem. Work another 7 years. Work another, and you can marry Rachel. So today, you walk in, the bride is uncovered. You just make sure you're getting the right.
She doesn't have a veil over her face.
She does not have a veil over her face, and you dance him in, and everyone's singing. And this is really where it builds to the peak. I think the Bedeken is really the most exciting part of the wedding.
Well, when you do it.
When I do it. Right. I was actually flown in by our friend Jen Bell to America just to perform their Bedeken. And you can really do a lot
we called you
it's
the
a beautiful
Masada Bedeken.
Right. That's not a real thing, by the way.
Really
that's not a real thing. So he covers her face. Rabbi David Aaron has a beautiful Torah, and we have to quote him every week, basically.
Right.
Where he says, it seems that way, I'm not surprised, where he says it's because you marry, even today, you're marrying Rachel and you're marrying Leah. You're marrying the woman that you think you're going to get and the one that you meet later on. Right.
I love that.
Do you love that? It's nice. It's a nice Torah. It could be taken either way, I think.
Well, I choose to take it in a sweet way.
Okay, good. That's the way I meant it. And then from there, you go immediately from there to the chuppah. The chuppah is
First, the groom with his parents.
first groom with his parents. He steps into the chuppah. The chuppah is a canopy.
Right.
There's no walls, only a roof. And it represents the home you guys are going to make with each other.
Together.
You know what was beautiful? And people crowd. Like sometimes you go to a wedding in America, and it's like people sit orderly in rows, and you have like
Right.
the wedding procession, just like any other wedding. In Israel, people crowd around the chuppah. People were just standing there and crowding around it. And when we were at Tova's, the Rabbi Aaron Leibowitz, said something so beautiful. He says, yeah, you see what the roof is? And the roof represents God above your home. Mm-hmm. But the walls are made from the people that you love.
Aww.
And the walls of your home should always be the love that you guys create with each other and with your friends and with your family. And it's a very much of a group dynamic with it. And
that's fantastic.
it's beautiful.
I love
then
that.
the bride comes down and
With her parents.
There's different customs. Sometimes the mothers will bring the bride, and
Right.
the fathers will bring. It depends on what your individual custom is. I want both of us to walk our kids down.
Right, I do too.
Right.
I want to be on Shaul's arm, Nechama's arm, Sarah's arm.
Right. Exactly. And might not let go, but
That'll be the hard part.
that'll be the hard part. But the bride walks around the groom. She circles the groom 7 times, like creating this force field around him.
Why 7 times?
7 times is, there's a very much of a 7 is a very, very symbological number in Judaism. 7 days, things in nature have 7 colors of the rainbow, 7 notes in a musical scale. It's the number that represents the natural world. 7 days in a week, 7th day is Shabbat.
So she walks around him 7 times. Sometimes she's led by her mother and followed by her mother-in-law, or
the mothers
order.
usually lead them
involved.
around, and everyone, the closest family, are standing with them under the chuppah. Mm-hmm. The Masada Kiddushin then makes the blessings of what's called the erusin. He makes 2 blessings, one over a cup of wine, and he gives at that point. They give the groom So at this point, the bride gives the groom a talit, right? There's a custom that men start wearing their talit after they get married. So
and they receive it under the chuppah.
They receive it under the chuppah, and there's another reason to it, because there's a special blessing the first time you do something called the Shechianu, that thank you, God, for bringing me to this season, to this moment, and there's to be able to say that, you should say it over. Sometimes you say it over a new article of clothing. So this allows him to say that blessing underneath the chuppah. And here's the important part: the rabbi who does the weddings isn't really the important one, right? The bride and groom are obviously the most important,
right?
But what makes it a bride and groom, what makes them married, is a man giving something to a woman of value. Right? Not too much value. Basically, by today, Sheva Pruta, about $5 at least. Could be more, which it, always usually is.
Yeah.
In front of 2 witnesses with the declaration that they should be married.
And that's the key. That's the moment that they're married. So
what happens is you call up these 2
Wait
witnesses.
a minute. I've heard, I think, is an urban legend.
Yeah, there's a famous urban legend that these high school
parlor.
kids are at a pizza parlor, and a guy gives a slice of pizza to his girlfriend and says, with this piece of pizza, I will betroth you. But because he said it in front of 2 of his friends, which were Shomer Shabbat Jews and therefore kosher witnesses, they actually have to get a divorce now. But I think that's an urban legend. I think it's pretty safe to say that that's an urban legend.
I do too.
In
But
theory,
you see
that
story,
could work. You
right?
can see from that story what happens at the wedding is these 2 Adim, these witnesses, and they're usually, you try and get, very holy people for this. Pious people for this, who's, without a doubt, they're good witnesses, and they come up, and the Masada Kiddushin shows them the ring, hands the ring, and they usually ask the Chatan, did you purchase this with your own money? There's a big problem if he bought it on a credit card and hasn't done any payments yet because he hasn't paid anything for it yet. So usually, I always say, like, make sure you buy the ring in cash, right? Make sure you own it. And then he hands it, he places it on the bride's finger, the pointer finger, index finger of the right hand. And he says, Harei at mikudeshet li. With this ring, according to the laws of Moses, with this ring I betroth you to me.
So here in Israel, at that moment,
because they're married, so everyone knows mikudeshet, which means married. Like that's the cool thing about here in Israel. Everything's done in Hebrew, but like you speak Hebrew, people know Hebrew here, so it's a
that's beautiful. It's a really powerful moment.
It's a powerful moment. At this point, the Ketubah that we've written is in the room before the wedding is read aloud, so everyone knows it. And it's really beautiful. Then you have 7 members of the community are called up one at a time, and they do what are called the Sheva Brachot, the 7 blessings of the wedding. They hold a cup of wine.
And the bride and groom usually, the Chatan and Kala usually pick 7 people that they really want to honor.
That they really want to honor. It's a big honor to get one of these at the wedding. And after they recite these 7 blessings, there's this concept that because we don't have a temple, because in some ways we're still in exile, because we don't have the ability to be fully Jewish in our land, and I mean it's better now, but for 2,000 years we haven't. Right. Well, what's interesting, the song that's sung over and over again, and it's in the blessing. The 7th blessing is this pasuk, this verse from the Bible, that kol sasan v'kol simcha, kol chatan v'kol kala, that there'll still be joy. There will be what's ultimate joy. Not that there still will be joy. The joy of a bridegroom, the voice of a bridegroom, and the voice of a bride. And we say that, but it really actually comes from a verse in Jeremiah that talks about the day that the exile will happen and Jerusalem will be destroyed. And he says that there will be in the streets of Jerusalem no kol sasan, no kol simcha, no more voices of joy left. And really every single wedding is an acknowledgement that, guess what? We've brought joy back, even in our darkest moments, but we're still not there. Then they place a wine glass on the floor, and the groom recites the verse, Im ishkachech Yerushalayim, if I forget you, Jerusalem, may my right hand forget how to work. And in remembrance of the destruction of the temple, he stamps on the glass and smashes it. Smash. And everyone screams Mazal Tov, and they dance them out of there. And then, this is a really nice part, they take them immediately from this, they haven't seen each other in 7 days, they've married, everyone's around them, we're about to have this crazy dancing and this wild time at this wedding. But the very first thing they do is they take the bride and groom to a Yichud room, to a room where they could just spend their first moments as a married couple alone, secluded. They have like a little food in there where they could have their meal by themselves and break their fast and have actually a moment alone at their wedding. And that's really beautiful. And they're in there for a while, and then they're like 20 minutes, half an hour, and then they come out and we just dance like crazy. Right.
The guests at the wedding have been out there eating and
Yeah, we get a little stuff to eat first. We are Jewish after all.
Eating, drinking, and then they come out and the party starts.
The party starts rocking. And you know what I love about the dancing at a wedding? It's, I've been to weddings, and you've been to weddings, and we've all been to weddings where it's like, it's a disco floor.
Right.
And you're out there and everyone's out there dancing. Look, the bride and groom was out there. Everyone here is dancing for the bride and groom. We're
facing them. We're entertaining them. We're eye contact with them.
They're lifting them on a chair. The mitzvah, the main mitzvah for wedding guests is to be sameach hatan v'kala, to bring joy to the bride and groom.
And boy, do people
my
take that
gosh.
seriously
They
here.
juggle. There was a guy at this last wedding who lit his hat
I
on
saw, it
fire,
was crazy.
and you see.
That's not
you
so
see,
uncommon, though.
It's not so uncommon to see. Like, there are people who learn. It's called shtick. People who learn to do these crazy things just so they could perform them at weddings, and people dress up
woman
in
in Nachlaot who's been to a lot of the same weddings we've been to brings all these hula hoops and
hula
does this whole
hoops.
thing with hula
hula
hoops.
hoops. There's jugglers. There's like whatever, but like it's 45 minutes. It's 45 minutes to an hour of just ecstatic, crazy dancing and doing tricks
Right.
for the bride and groom.
Anything. I remember we were at a wedding. You grabbed an empty vodka bottle and filled it with water, and you danced in front of them
with it on my head, and then I
guzzled
chugged it, and everyone thought that
Everyone was like, "Is
I
that
would
water?"
have died if that was if that was actually.
But it was entertaining.
It was entertaining,
and that's what you were supposed to be doing.
and you know what? The main point about it is it's for the bride and groom. And, there's so many, we're people that have experienced some really tough times and really difficult times over the last 2,000 years. But there's moments of just absolute joy, and the moments of a bride and a groom finding each other and coming together in this crazy world to start a family and to take this generation on to the next generation. That is just such a moment of beautiful celebration.
We actually call our celebrations simchas.
Yeah, joys.
Joys.
We're going to a joy tonight. Right? And you know what? It's interesting. Like simcha means, right? And we say this in the wedding blessing. They always say like how Eskimos have hundreds of words for snow or whatever. I don't know how many. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't speak Eskimo. But Jews have all of these words for joy. Sasan v'simcha, gila, rina. Like these are all words, and they mean something a little bit different, but all of them are present in the blessings at the wedding. We do the Sheva Brachot again at the end of the wedding feast. So after the dancing, we have this wedding feast. We do it communally. And then what's really nice, and this could be, maybe we'll do this as its own stuff you should know, but for an entire week after the wedding, there's this concept in the culture we grew up in that there was a honeymoon. So immediately from the wedding, the bride and groom run off to Hawaii and sit on a beach so they could see what life is going to be like as married people.
As married people.
In Judaism, it's like, no, you don't fully belong to each other yet.
No, you have that brief period in the Yichud room, and
That's
then
it.
you're back to
You're
belonging
ours,
to everybody.
You're ours for an entire week.
Right.
And every night for a week, there's a feast where these 7 blessings are said again.
Also called Sheva Brachas.
Sheva Brachot, the 7 blessings. And at every one of these feasts, different people speak. There's music. There's good food. And after a week, then you could finally collapse with exhaustion. But, I
have to mention one thing that you brought up, that we put the Chatan and Kala up on chairs. And then sometimes they'll use like a scarf or something, and they'll dance them with the holding the scarves. Our friends Dave and Hannah took that to an extreme, and both of them stood on a table.
On a round table.
On a round table.
Yeah.
And were hoisted up and danced around the room while balancing on a table. I have to get a picture of that.
There's some crazy things that happen at Jewish weddings.
They're fun.
They're fun. They're a lot of fun. Go to a Jewish wedding. Better yet, have a Jewish wedding if you haven't had one. Invite us.
Oh yeah, that'd
Invite
be
us.
great.
We like going to weddings, and this was good. This was good. This is definitely stuff Jews should know. Batya. People should find us. By the way, let me give a little plug here. Go to iTunes. Do you like this podcast? Do you enjoy this? Are you enjoying what you're hearing here? Do us a favor. Go to iTunes right now. Find our podcast. Just do a search for Stuff Jews Should Know and give it a rating, and write a little. If you like something about it, write what you like. We read every one of these. Keeps us going. We really enjoy it.
We love that. You could also send us an email.
Podcast@stuffjewshouldknow. Like us on Facebook.
Find us on Twitter.
Find us on Twitter.
JSK
Podcast. Or just follow. You can follow Batya on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter. You can,
You're much more active on Twitter.
I'm much more active.
But...
I'm a pretty active Twitterer, and that's it. Lots of ways to find us. Thanks for joining us for this, folks. Have Mazel Tov.
Mazel Tov. Shalom, shalom.